I mean, for me, my faith is everything. It's my identity, and it's grown to become more of my identity than I had ever anticipated or planned or thought it would. I went to public school, I went to art college, so I didn't have any theological training or anything like that. When I can access spiritual advisors from, Catholic advisors, priests, friends of mine, my own spiritual director, especially as I prepare, as he had mentioned, for certain scenes where I'm not quite sure what's sort of underneath, what's underlying, what's girding the scene, what's girding the moment in the story of the scriptures that we are trying to portray. I will reach out and I will try to get a better sense of it from a theological perspective, because I don't have that training, obviously, myself. It was a couple of years, even before the pandemic, that I had my own sort of deeper conversion. And, I was, at the precipice of penury to an extent, and I didn't know how I was going to continue forward. I was, as an actor, I was juggling 6 or 7 different side hustles. I hadn't worked in a few weeks. I'd done a lot of work doing voiceover, which is like, recording voices for video games or commercials and things like that, but I wasn't working consistently. I had exhausted all my financial resources. I couldn't get arrested for a catering job. And that was one of, like I said, 6 or 7 different jobs I was kind of juggling to try to make ends meet. And it was a Saturday morning in May, and I woke up and I was like $100 overdraft. I had 20 bucks in my pocket. I had enough food for the rest of the day, and that was it. I didn't know how I was going to pay rent the following week or 2 weeks, in addition to all the other bills that I had coming due. And so it brought me to this, existential crisis. And I got on my knees, and there was my crucifix, and I just started pouring out my heart to God and saying, look, for years I've been asking that if there's something else that I should be doing, please show me what it is, because this is extremely difficult. And I wasn't a young man, I wasn't in my 20s. I didn't just land in Los Angeles that year, fresh out of college. I'd been working 20 years already, and inconsistently. And I said to God, so you've never given me any other indication that I should be doing something else, and now look at where I am. But I trust you, and so I'm going to surrender everything I have, my life, my will, how I'm going to eat. I'm going to give it all to you, and I'm not going to worry about it anymore. You said your burden is easy and your yoke is light. Here's mine. And I left that morning with the 20 bucks I had in my pocket. I probably spent it on a really good breakfast. And for the first time, I actually felt like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but not my problem. I honestly left it on the floor because I had no choice. Because if I had been left to my own designs to continue trying to manage and control my career and do everything I was supposed to do, the Lord helps those who help themselves. That's actually not in the Bible. And so I got back that afternoon to my apartment and just, wondering what's going to happen next, and really curious to see how God might show up, if he would show up. And I opened my mailbox, and there were 4 checks in the mail. And I said, oh, no, these aren't real. And I knew I had like a $50 reimbursement check from some makeup or something that I bought. So I knew there was that was coming my way. So I was like, there's the check, at least there's 50 bucks. But then there's these 3 other checks that I had no idea where they were from or what they were for. I set up my phone on my bed, and I just documented the moment, because I could not believe that after I had just wept and poured out my heart to God, saying, you got to do something because I got no more options, that here I was with 4 checks. And I opened each one of the checks, and every check was bigger than the one before it. And at the end of the day, I had like $1,100. And 3 months later, Dallas Jenkins called me to do 4 episodes of a series about Jesus and didn't know where it was going to go. It was crowdfunded, and I had done 3 short films with him for his church's Good Friday service in the Midwest, the previous 4 years. So when he called and said, "You want to put the sandals back on?" I said, "Absolutely." And here we are 4 years later.
I struggle to follow Jesus like anybody else who considers themselves a Christian. But the struggle is part of it. And I think God knows what we struggle with, but we're still challenged to do what he would do in those situations. And I think because I actually believe that seems to have lent me a kind of credibility and an authenticity in approaching the character that maybe people haven't seen. As I was at a conference in a stadium of about 40,000 people, and I came off the stage, and shortly thereafter I got to the little green room where they had us hanging out, and security comes into the room and says, "Hey, there's a lady outside who's got a child in a wheelchair. Is it okay? She wants to know if she can say hello." And I came outside, and I met the lady and her son, and she was already overwhelmed. And she then went on to tell me, she said, "Our favorite episode is the episode where Tamara, one of the characters, lets her friend down on a stretcher in through the roof of Zebedee's house, and Jesus heals him, and he can walk again." And she says, "So I just thought, wouldn't it be great if the same thing happened to my son?" And I said, "Yeah, that would be amazing, but I gotta be honest with you. As far as I know, I don't have that gift, but I would love to pray with you if that's okay." I said, "Would that be all right?" She's like, yeah. So I just sat there with them. I stood with them, and I prayed with them for a minute, and they were so gracious and thanked me, and I walked away, and then I just burst into tears, because I thought to myself, man, on some level, I must have let them down. But they know what I do. They know I'm not a healer, I'm not a preacher. So once I got through that line of thought, I recognized that. I said, okay, I can't be what she maybe wanted me to be. I can only be who I've been made to be.